For over 40 years, he has been the most recognized voice in the history of pro wrestling and the man with the stories that are too hot for TV. Now, he's bringing that signature voice to the podcast world, along with some of the biggest names in the business. Welcome to the Hotline with Mean Gene Okerlund. Now, here's WWE Hall of Famer and your dear close personal friend, Mean Gene Okerlund.
Welcome to the second installment of the Hotline with Mean Gene Okerlund. Damian Nelson here along with the Hall of Famer himself, Mean Gene Okerlund.
It is my pleasure. It is my pleasure. You know, we've already done one show.
Yes.
Very enjoyable. Covered a myriad of subjects.
That was on Survivor Series Sunday from Atlanta.
Right.
Great reviews. People love you, Gene.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to hear that because I think we've got a few stories that maybe some folks haven't heard.
Indeed.
And we'll share those here.
And that's what this podcast is all about, going back over your, 40, how many years? 42?
44.
44 years in the wrestling business.
45 in April. Get ready.
AWA, WCW, WWE, still a member of the WWE family, and the stories that you have are fantastic. And last time we talked about, unfortunately, some of the stars who are no longer with us. And one of those stars that we touched on but didn't go into much detail about because you have such tremendous stories about is Nick Bockwinkle.
Well, Nick Bockwinkle, I mean, if anybody knows the history of this guy, USC, Oklahoma, football player, got hurt.
Where did he play?
He played at Oklahoma and USC,
okay.
Southern Cal. Nick was a great athlete, very articulate, we know that. But in the ring, he was, I'd have to put him like a Carl Gotch or a Billy Robinson or some of the great technical wrestlers of today. Kurt Angle, who, of course, was a gold medal Olympian. But Nick Bockwinkle was so much more than that because he got that ring psychology, second generation. His father, Warren Bockwinkle, was also a main event wrestler for many, many years out of St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay. And
Nick really arrived, I'd say, when he joined up with Vern Gagne about 1969, and he had a rivalry with Vern. You know, probably spanned at least 20 years, and they were all great matches.
Yeah.
Bockwinkle, with the addition of Bobby Heenan as his manager, I mean, that was the coup de grace. That made that package that much more sellable.
So they didn't necessarily start out together?
No, they did not.
Okay. How deep into that 20 years did Heenan come along with?
I think Heenan came when he arrived in the AWA right about that same time, and then they matched them up with Bockwinkle as a manager. Nick could speak for himself.
Yeah.
But just added a little more to it.
So why? Because a lot of times a manager is given to someone who can't speak well for themselves. So why the pairing of Heenan and Bockwinkle?
I think it was a great pairing because early on they even worked as a tag team.
There you go.
Nick
okay.
Bockwinkle worked with Ray Stevens, with a lot of different guys as a tag team. But Heenan just kind of morphed into that role of manager, and he was so good. Start with Nick Bockwinkle, end up with Bobby Heenan, and I mean, they were powerful, entertaining interviews. They told stories. They could certainly generate heat like nobody could. And then the things that happened both in and out of the ring made that package complete.
Yeah. So Bockwinkle was champion for I think some 7 years over that run that he had in the AWA. He was there all the way till the end of the AWA in the early 90s, and we'd see him in, I don't know if it was NWA or WCW. I think he played like a commissioner role or something of the sort.
He did.
Along the same time you were down there too.
Actually, I think his last match was 1987.
Okay.
If I recall, he was active in the AWA through 91 when they folded, but then he was a road agent. at WWE.
Oh, was he?
And he even joined us down at WCW for a while as the commissioner.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was a role that he did very well at.
Mm-hmm. So you obviously got the opportunity to work with Nick Bockwinkle quite a bit and interview him and talk to him on air. That on-air persona, the words he used, the soft-spoken nature of his promos,
Mm-hmm.
was that something that Nick brought to the table or something that developed over time? And how was it working with him
I think
in those
that
interviews?
was the real Nick Bockwinkle.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some people you see out on the street have one personality, and on TV, a totally different persona.
Yeah.
Nick was the same wherever he was.
It worked, huh?
Yeah.
So he was his on-air persona was an extension
Of
him?
his real self.
Is that the secret? Because you look at the Stone Cold Steve Austins of the world, you look at a lot of big stars, and it seems like the closer that their character is to an exclamation of their normal self, the more successful they are. Ric Flair is Ric Flair.
Oh, I mean,
That's not a gimmick.
that's the deal right there. And the same with Bockwinkle.
Yeah.
Nick Bockwinkle, I'll say this, a great family man.
Mm-hmm.
He was married to a great young lady, Asian, by the name of Darlene, and they spent, I think, 30 years together.
Wow.
They golfed together.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they loved to dine. They'd cook in. They'd have friends over to the house.
Yeah.
Just a very good life for him. But back to his career.
Yeah.
He made an indelible mark, I think, with that run, that classic run with Vern Gagne.
Mm-hmm.
Not too many people could have done that.
Mm-hmm.
Vern, not an easy guy to work
He was
with
stiff,
or
wasn't he?
for. He's stiff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And words and in the ring, huh?
Words and in the ring. And he was very demanding.
Stubborn?
Well, I don't know, stubborn. You got to give and take a little bit in this business, but yeah, he knew what he wanted,
Mm-hmm.
and he demanded that kind of performance.
Mm-hmm.
But Nick was his premier player for so many years. Actually, that fact that he only held the title 7 or 8 years,
Mm-hmm.
the feud went on for 2 decades.
Right.
And Bockwinkle, a little younger than Vern Gagne, but Vern was pushing it at the end.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was approaching 60 years of age to get in the ring and perform.
But the fans still wanted to see Vern get in the ring.
Oh,
and perform.
of course they did.
They expected
I
it.
remember 10 retirement matches by him alone.
And he might have meant it each time.
Right. Yeah, this is it. I'm not going to do it anymore.
Huh.
And then whoop, ho, ho, maybe one more time.
Yeah. So there has to be many favorite Nick Bockwinkle moments or stories, and this is the hotline, so nothing's too hot
No.
for
And
it.
We're not going to duck anything here. We're going to tell it like it is. Nick Bockwinkle, a locker room guy. Nobody hated the guy.
Really?
No,
That's
I
rare
mean, he
in this
had-
business.
And he went through matches, sit down with his opponent, and go through, make sure everything was in order before they hit the arena.
Mm-hmm.
And he was an organized guy, but also very creative.
Yeah.
Came in. He was. You could tell his creativity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the spots, the high spots in the matches were good. And then, of course, the involvement of Heenan
Right.
just added to the hatred that people had for Nick Bockwinkle. They thought he was arrogant.
Oh, he was.
And God, he was.
But he backed it up.
He did back it up. He backed it up. I think he was probably one of the most articulate guys that I can ever recall in this business.
There's two people you think about. You talk about being articulate, and we talked about the soft-spoken nature of his delivery and his promos, and he exuded that arrogance.
Mm-hmm.
But there's another person who did promos in a similar style, and that being Jake the Snake Roberts. He never yelled.
Yeah.
Nick never yelled. Jake never yelled.
No.
But when they did, when they even raised their voice just a little bit,
Yeah, you knew it.
it pulled you in.
See that much more effect.
Mm-hmm.
because it was a little different top spin.
Yeah.
And Jake is a good comparison to Nick. Nick Bockwinkle he knew how to piss people off. Is that French?
No, that's Spanish.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
We're worldwide.
I didn't realize I spoke Spanish, but he had a way of getting under people's skin, and I think it was that arrogance and the way he would put the audience down, the fans down. But God, that's what made him. That's what made him.
Did Eric Bischoff have a little bit of that? He was easy to hate, and he embraced it.
Yeah, but I mean, Eric Bischoff was easy to hate for real. You know, even though I get along very good with Eric Bischoff today, and we talk probably once every month or 6 weeks.
Yeah,
he's a changed man.
he is.
He lives up in Cody, Wyoming, in the middle of nowhere.
Brewing beer. He's got a beer company.
Exactly. And he got a lot of things going.
So let's go back to Bockwinkle.
Yeah.
And, having been from Milwaukee and seeing the shows down at the Mecca Arena when the AWA would come to town.
The auditorium, the Mecca.
Absolutely. And Bockwinkle being one of the headliners on those shows a lot of the time. But I only saw him from the perspective of the audience. You worked with him. You traveled with him. You knew him. I assume you probably partied with him from time to time.
Well, he was not a party guy.
Not at all?
No, I mean, cold beer or something at the end of a long day. But Nick was always on time, always organized. He became part of the booking committee for the AWA, working hand in hand with Vern.
Okay.
So a lot of the stories and feuds and rivalries were actually from the mind of Nick Bockwinkle.
Interesting.
And his background, being a legitimate athlete, and not that most wrestlers aren't. We have a few that probably
But you said,
don't qualify.
But you said he played football for Oklahoma, USC, so he had that pedigree, if you will.
Right, he did. And his father was also an excellent wrestler, Warren Bockwinkle.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, Nicholas J. Bockwinkle. No J. It's Nicholas Warren Bockwinkle.
Okay.
Real name.
Wow. Your favorite memory of Nick Bockwinkle?
My favorite memory of Nick Bockwinkle goes back to, I would have to say, about 1981 or 2
Okay.
at Comiskey Park in Chicago.
Oh.
Another final match for Vern Gagne. Right.
A final.
Nobody knew the finish of the match, including the referee.
Really?
Including Bobby Heenan,
Uh-huh.
who was going to be part of it. And the reasoning behind it was, if we have a big house, Vern says, I'll take the belt.
Okay.
If we don't have a big house, you retain the belt.
That's interesting. What was that logic?
Hell, there was only 20,000 people there. And all of a sudden at the end, Nick got the office from Vern, and Vern won the match.
Huh. And they didn't know. Nobody knew. They didn't tell anybody because that was the deciding factor. How many people showed up?
There was a guy, an announcer by the name of Sam Menaker. I don't know if you recall him, but Slimin' Sammy, former wrestler. But he came out and he said, what the hell's going on here? Who won? So they had sorted it all out kind of after the fact. But that, to me, I think was one of the most revealing moments of how this business works. It works on a lot of egos.
Yeah.
And Vern Gagne had a huge ego.
But
Chant one more time.
But it worked, didn't it?
It did work.
In that match and many others.
It
worked.
It did, and of course it really kind of set things up for the future run that they had, which was for another year. And that was the end of it.
How did they sustain it? You said some 20 years they feuded.
Yeah. Well, number one, all great matches.
Yeah.
There were screw jobs involved. Bockwinkle would be the title holder, get disqualified, and you can't lose the title on a
Right.
Uh,
It had to be a pinfall or submission, right?
Had to be over the top rope.
Yeah.
Forget about it. Mm-hmm. But they were good, solid matches, and of course the rhetoric, that rivalry on TV. I think that was very important to sustain a run that long.
It's almost like I've heard this term before, that talking them into the building.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what helped carry it? And explain what that means a little bit.
Well, I think talking them into the building is you're giving people a reason to come and see the match. Promises were made, threats were made, and you got a guy like Bobby Heenan who could really stir it up very good to enforce any of the thinking or actually what the story that Nick would tell.
Yeah.
And Nick was good in his own right, but it just became it became a tradition.
Mm-hmm.
All of the big shows, Thanksgiving, Christmas Day, Bockwinkle, Gagne. And Nick had to carry a pretty heavy load on his shoulders there for a lot of years.
Mm-hmm. So why the last match in '87? Was it physical or was it
Bockwinkle?
Bockwinkle, yeah.
Nick had gone in the studio and took a look at a television match he was involved with, and he said, "I don't want to be on TV anymore."
He knew it was that time?
Yeah, it is time. I need to go.
Which is interesting because that's very unlike the situation Vern was in.
Well, Vern could, he owned the company.
Right, exactly.
So he could call the shots anytime he wanted to. Vern Gagne, a smart man, good businessman. The only problem he had a fortune at one time, died broke.
Yeah.
But he tried to chase the Irishman. I'm talking about Vince McMahon.
Oh, right.
And that takes a lot of money.
Yeah.
And the resources were going, television clearances, cable TV. It all contributed to the demise of the AWA.
Loss of talent, too.
Loss of talent.
But, a lot of people say, or I've heard anyways, and I'd be interested to hear your perspective, having been around and knowing the people involved, that when the AWA did go out of business, it was more of the things you just talked about, but also an unwillingness to evolve. Because AWA had ESPN. I don't think there's been another wrestling company that's been broadcast on ESPN since.
WCCW World Class.
Oh, World Class was? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, but they set the trend for that,
right,
if you will. They had, as you said, from Minneapolis west, they had it.
Everything.
It was
Salt Lake,
AWA.
Denver.
Even down to St. Louis.
St. Louis,
Yeah.
right.
New Orleans maybe a couple times as well, I think.
That would have been a kind of a combination of organizations.
Yeah. But what was it? Was it all of that stuff combined in just a perfect storm, or was it just AWA had seen its run?
AWA did not change. They did not make the... they tried to, but it was done at such a low level that it really had no influence on the way society and Americana culture, it just fell flat. And the talent, I love the Nasty Boys, but how much can you take?
Yeah.
Of knobs and sags.
And we know what ultimately happened with Vern. He had, was it Alzheimer's or dementia? He didn't end up in a very good place towards the end.
Last 10 years of his life were very rough.
Yeah.
Not only on him, but his family.
Right.
I did the eulogy at his funeral. And, of course, the guy really hadn't been with us
right
for a long time. I got a comment from Bud Grant, former coach of the Minnesota Vikings. He went to school with Vern at the University of Minnesota. He said Vern Gagne was the best all-around athlete he had ever met.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Basketball, baseball, track, wrestling, football. He did it all. So that's
a
the
high
one side
compliment.
Bockwinkle Gagne rivalry.
Yeah. Bockwinkle would unfortunately be in somewhat of a similar situation towards the end of his time in living out in Las Vegas.
Right.
But he was a very private man, it seemed, in his years after wrestling. I think we didn't see him much of him after his time in WCW, and he walked away. He was done.
Number one, he moved from Minneapolis, where he had his home for 30 years, moved out to Las Vegas. I think the snowbanks and taxes drove him out. But no, he had dementia, and a lot of our guys did, as we know. Mad Dog Vachon, Vern, Red Bastien, the great Red Bastien, and I know there's got to be a handful of others. It's I imagine comes with all the bumps they took over the years because, believe it or not, they're the real deal.
Yeah. But, there's all this talk of concussions and the long-term impact on these things, these injuries. Do you think that did play a factor, or?
Oh, Damien, please. It did play a factor.
Yeah.
These guys got hurt.
For a long
time.
time.
And back in the old days, you weren't guaranteed money.
You had to work for it.
You play and pay.
Yeah.
And that was it. Today, guys are on contracts.
Right.
They get hurt. They put them on the shelf, rehabilitate.
Oh.
But back then, if you didn't work, you didn't get paid.
Mm-hmm. Did Bockwinkle ever get the respect he deserved from the national wrestling audience outside of the AWA?
I don't know if national or international audience, but Nick Bockwinkle certainly made a big name for himself in that area. And that AWA area territory was so big, half of the country. I mean, not half the people, but half of the country.
Right.
And he was a big name in San Francisco. Salt Lake was a big market for the AWA. Denver was huge.
Really?
Yeah, but then, all the way down to Chicago and Milwaukee, which you're very aware of. Green Bay. They had a tie-in with Bruiser in Indianapolis and some of his markets.
Yeah.
But Vern, started at the old NWA, and with Fred Kohler at the Marigold down in Chicago on the Duma.
Oh, the Marigold,
television.
yes.
Yeah, right. Television network.
Yes.
And Nick Bockwinkle, even though I think he had his first professional match probably about 1955.
Okay.
Or 56 in there. So if you take a look, he had a hell of a run.
He did. Hell of a run in wrestling, hell of a run in life. He made it 80 years with us. But, it's also interesting that you went into the WWE Hall of Fame, the first broadcaster, and that was in 2006.
Right.
The following year, Bockwinkle would get the same accolades. He would be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame.
And it was a big thing for Nick because he was never a WWF or E guy, so I think that says volumes about the respect, the talent that Nick Bockwinkle offered to the wrestling world.
And it's interesting. It appears 2 or 3 times only that he actually appeared on WWE broadcasting or programming. The Hall of Fame induction, and then on an episode of Raw back in 2010, I think it was. Aside from that...
Old school.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, those old school Raws are so much fun.
Yeah. And they're good for once a year.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But you'd have to include Nick in that group of luminaries, if you will.
He was inducted into the Hall of Fame by Bobby Heenan.
And Bobby was struggling a little bit in 2007.
Yeah.
He had some health issues
that
affected his speech, and but still got the point across.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Nick's speech was 2 minutes.
Right.
He was gone.
leave them wanting more, right?
That's it, always.
You talk about how great Heenan was with Bockwinkle, and we'll of course, down the road here, spend an episode talking about it. It might be several episodes talking about Bobby Heenan because there's just so much. But even that induction of Bockwinkle, and when Heenan was inducted himself, his verbal, he wasn't able to communicate as great as he had in the past, but he still communicated as great as he had in the past.
And funniest man on the face of God's green earth, as Harley Race would say.
Yeah. Not even just in wrestling, though.
No, in real life. Big rib guy, ribs, we all talk about ribs. Yeah. Heenan could be part and parcel to all of that. Instigator, like a Kurt Hennig.
Remember when you guys did the old school battle royal, WrestleMania 17?
Right, the gimmick battle.
Battle royal, absolutely.
Gimmick battle royal. Yeah.
It was just commentary gold from the two of you. That, I think the match was half as long as the introductions, but it was still just so great. And that was y'all's return to WWE.
And the only reason that the Iron Sheik won it is because he couldn't get out of the ring.
Oh, really?
No, he
couldn't take the bump, huh?
Yeah. So he'll win.
I watch a lot of the old primetime wrestling. Bobby the Brain Heenan, Gorilla Monsoon.
Gorilla.
Just absolute tremendous stuff. And there was an episode where I think it was a Christmas episode, where he took his wallet out and there was only $1 in it. And he then said, "Wait a minute. I think Okerlund took my wallet. I think Okerlund snatched $100 out of it. I had $5,000 in there."
Oh, please. I think also one of the great running gags that I had with Heenan, as long as we're on the subject of Bockwinkle, was Mae Young and the Fabulous Moolah. If you recall, the coach at one WrestleMania was looking for us for whatever reason.
Yes.
But we were holed up in a back room with these two lovely senior ladies.
With the smeared lipstick.
Right. Trying to get the clothes back on. Get a little older, that's not that easy to do anymore.
How were they?
What?
Mae and Moolah.
Old. They were.
So many great moments. So many great moments.
Nick Bockwinkle's legacy, I think that's something I want to touch on. He's a true gentleman. Mm-hmm. And I think that is going to live forever. But, all of those matches now are digitalized and will be with us forever.
And they're available on the WWE Network.
They are.
Along with those great episodes featuring you. You go back to the Table for Three, which I love. You did one
Table
with
for Three is
Piper and Orndorff. And I think that ended up, unfortunately, being Piper's last
I think that was his last interview, per se, for broadcast purposes.
Yeah. But, just you can go in, you can type in Bockwinkle, the WWE Network, and all the AWA footage and the stories, and I don't know if they've released a special, and perhaps they will at some point.
I'm sure there's going to be a Nick Bockwinkle tribute.
But there was an
DVD.
There was an AWA DVD of which Bockwinkle played a huge role. Mm-hmm. I only had the pleasure of meeting him 2 or 3 times, but he carried himself in such a way that he didn't have to tell you how good he was, because you knew how good he was just being with him. Yeah. And that's a rare trait.
And if you ever saw him on TV, from the time he was 25 till he was 50, he was still a consummate performer in that ring.
Yeah.
And doing stuff that kids half his age couldn't do. Great athlete.
And didn't have to do the stuff that kids half his age are trying to do.
No, he didn't. Because reputation alone, he could stand on that, and very well.
Nick Bockwinkle, a true legend.
Great friend. Great loss.
Yeah.
But gone, but not forgotten.
Great memories.
Yeah.
Gene, the hotline.
The hotline, I like it. We're going to be talking about a lot of things in the future. I like to go through guys like Nick Bockwinkle.
Yeah.
From my era, my early era. But we're going to be covering some current guys. We're going to have an opportunity to meet up with a lot of guys out of in Vegas.
Yeah.
I'm getting a little choked up here thinking about Nick Bockwinkle, but we're going to have a lot of fun with this show. And I hope you folks out there are having as much fun as Damien and
Well, how could they not?
myself.
How could they not? You take it with you. You can listen on the go. Great to hear on the way to or from work. You can go ahead and download it on iTunes. It's on the PWR Now network. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe now. It's free. Doesn't cost any. The old hotline was what, $1.99 a minute?
That's right.
And you don't need your parents' permission to get the
price.
podcast.
Yeah.
It's absolutely free. You can get it on Google. You can get it on thegeneokerlund.com, your website.
Folks, it could come in on your sewer pipes. You never know.
So, well, we got to work on that. What's the distribution channel for that?
Give me a week or two.
It's the hotline with me and Gene Okerlund. We're going to be going back. We're going to be going forward. We're going to be talking about WrestleManias of past. We're going to be talking to some of your great friends in the business and just having fun, just talking.
Damien, you and I with Ric Flair.
Oh, sweet Lord.
You and I with Hulk Hogan.
Oh, my.
You and I with Jesse Ventura.
Yeah.
Just talking to these guys and getting their thoughts. And, there's a lot of diverse opinions.
Absolutely.
About our business.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
well, we're going to share them all with you here on the hotline, folks. Thank you so much for joining us and going back down memory lane, if you will, this episode talking about the late, great Nick Bockwinkle and a perspective that only you really have, Gene, because you were always there. You weren't. You were always part of the show.
By choice, but yes.
You were always right alongside and watching and listening and seeing and hearing, and it's just an amazing perspective, and it's a privilege to be able to share that with the world via the hotline here, the podcast. So, with that, we're done for this episode.
Well, there's more to come. That's
Much
all I
more
can
to come.
say, and looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Gene, thank you so much. Fans listening all over the world, thank you so much. We appreciate your subscriptions here to the PWR Now Network. Other great podcasts here along with you, though, sir, on this network. We got Al Snow.
Right.
We got, of course, the Pro Wrestling Report, the television broadcast out of Milwaukee, where we talk about the latest going on in professional wrestling. We're talking to some more people as well. Everybody wants to be with Gene Okerlund and aligned with Gene Okerlund and the hotline.
Well, that's very kind. I appreciate that, and I enjoy being here too. So,
well, Gene,
that's the magic.
And the magic is over for this week.
That's it.
We'll be back with you guys again soon. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and get the podcast every time it happens.
Hasta la vista,
baby.
Baby.
Thanks for joining us on the hotline. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast right here on iTunes so you never miss an episode. You can also download new episodes online at pwrshow.com, where you can also find the best pro wrestling coverage in the world today from Damian Nelson and David Harrow. Until next time, this is the Hotline Podcast, signing off.